But also we have another phenomena, which is I call crossover marketing, which means those people at a low level, but they would like to accumulate part of their purchasing power to buy some products at a high level. So which means like luxury products in China, actually 70% of luxury products is purchased by those people. Suppose they are not the target consumers. So actually the typical market is like a 1+1. The one you will target at it, because for example, young white collar, you target at them, sell some product to them. But once you successfully achieve that market, but another part of consumers from the blue collar workers, they admire the lifestyle for white collar. So they were thinking for that product. But they still will be very sensitive about the price because they have limited purchasing power. So as a result, that's why the reason so many Chinese consumers want to buy the pirate brands, because they admire that, but they don't have enough purchasing power. So that's why, they use that way to do that. But anyway, so if you look at the massive market, if you want to achieve the success there, so always price is a very good way to win the market, at least in the short run.
Well, in the prestige sector, it's a little different, obviously. Price is a reflection of the quality and the positioning and the appeal of the concept and the product. So the focus there has to be on the training of the people. Anybody can sell on price. You don't have to have a lot of skill, because price then it becomes the driver if you have the lowest price. But if you have a great product at a high price, you need different skills to sell. So that you have to, when you train your people, they have to understand what the skills are that are required in order to sell your product. It's quite different than if you have a strategy via price.
It is true that in the United States we consume 71% of our GDP and save 1%. In China, 38% of the GDP is consumed and 35% is saved. So there's less a percent of the total pie that is consumed, and therefore there is a price sensitivity with certain exceptions. We find, as I said, 200 million people who can afford Starbucks price coffee, and that's dramatically increasing every year. And the point there is they're not buying a cup of coffee. They're buying an experience. So you pay more for the experience, in addition to the coffee and the other physical aspects.
Well, I'd like to make one point here. There's always this notion of high saving in China. To me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, when you compare it to the United States, it's the most sophisticated credit market in the world. Everybody has 10 credit cards. How many credit cards do people have in China? None. Okay? So once the credit system changes in China and people actually have credit cards and have credit and have the institutionalized credit situation, then the thing will change as well. So the saving is a bit of a reflection of the availability of credit cards and how people are purchasing.
Well, we do have 40 million credit card holders in China, so it's not now.
Yeah, but can they have credit on the credit card?
Yeah, but we do have a very good growth rate of the numbers of that. But I would say some American company, it's like Starbucks. They use American standard, and also it's not a standard for price, but also standard of it's not a standard for service, but also standard of price, which is if you look at the local standard of labor worker cost, should not be that high. So that's why it's also create a space for some Chinese entrepreneurs. They learn from Starbucks, and they integrate the local resource well, so they can create a much competitor. It's like Starbucks, but maybe more competitive in price. So I would say it's a kind of a try to figure out a way. It's not only like using the international standard and then refer to a local pricing standard.
Well, I would build on that and say that we have an interesting phenomenon because we have 35%, roughly 35% share in every one of the price segments as well as customer segments. So we struggle with this idea with the luxury end of the business. How do you make sure that you can sell value versus where you start going lower, you don't have to sell, you sell more on price. But then that creates differences inside the company. And one of the ways that we handled that was actually creating two different business models inside the company, because we almost were schizophrenic for a while with, if you had the guys that are the price guys, they'll influence the ones that got to sell value, and that's not what you want to have happen. You want to make sure that you can really sell value in your higher-end computers. Interesting enough, in China, the average selling price tends to be half of that and anywhere in the world. We're making reasonable profits there, but the model is a bit different from the standpoint that we're running with lower gross profits, but really lean operating expenses in order to be able to get a return. Now, the dual model I described, one is to go after what we call relationship customers, which are more large accounts, public sector, education customers. And then that is more of a face-to-face selling and selling value. Whereas we have a transactional business that goes after consumers and small businesses, and that's more of a marketing-driven opportunity where we send marketing vehicles, emails, ways to get people to actually go to either our websites or go to our stores to buy our equipment. That's a lot more price sensitive, and we have to be very careful with looking on a day-to-day basis, what's the competition doing, and are we in price position? Because the minute we fall out of price position, all the marketing vehicles that we have out there, direct mailers, freestanding inserts, they fall stale, and we can't drive demand into our stores.
There's a number of questions, Bill, Amelio, directed to you regarding Lenovo and its global aspirations and the quote-unquote made in China sort of tag, and whether that helps or hurts, and whether you see some momentum shifting here one way or the other.
Well, that's interesting, because one question always pops up is, why did we do an acquisition? Why didn't we do it organically? Well, what we realized was it was very difficult for us to get some of our talented executives in China to be able to go start something up somewhere else. We had some attempts, but we weren't successful at it. This was a wonderful opportunity with the IBM PCD group to be able to get $10 billion of revenue, and we had 3 at the time in China. Now we have 4.5 in China, and the term that was used in China at the time was the snake swallowing the elephant. And the idea, though, was we bought a brand in the ThinkPad brand, which is a premier notebook, and I hope many of you have one. If not, I can talk to you later about that. And we bought a large account business, primarily. And then we said, how are we going to manage this? Because the way it usually gets done in America or Europe is you plant expats all around, and then you essentially grow the operation. As Bill pointed out, they started with expats, but then eventually went to an entire national Chinese running the business there. But typically, you got to start with somebody. We had an opportunity now with this acquisition, to use an entirely different approach. Instead of a more hierarchical colonial approach of how you manage, we actually have more of a collegial approach across the world. So the people that we got in the acquisition are actually still running major portions of our business, and they're mostly local, whichever particular country you may be in. If you're in France, you'll see somebody from France running the country. If you're in South America, or in Brazil, you'll see a Brazilian running the country in Brazil. So that's the management system that we put in place. What was important now is, how do we get the Lenovo brand known and trusted around the world? We talked a bit about sponsorships as one area to be able to do that. But clearly, compelling products is one of the key ways to do that. And I'll just give one quick example in India. In India, about 18 months ago, we had brand awareness, unaided awareness of 1%. Today, we have unaided awareness of 74%. And we were able to do that through two major areas. One, we used some celebrities to help us talk about our products, and 2, we had some very compelling products that really made the day. And the 2 that we used one was a desktop that had what we called a jog dial on it that allows you to seamlessly switch between your still pictures, your videos, and your businesses. And you did it very, very cute. We had a commercial that was very snappy that got people into the stores. In laptops, we came out with a very thin laptop with face recognition, and allowed you, that was your password. So you would open up, and instead of keying in your password, it would recognize your face, and you'd go on the system. And you can imagine we had a really snappy commercial associated with that. We actually used the idea of a castaway. The guy was gone for a while. He comes back. His wife doesn't recognize him. The dog's barking at him, and he runs into the house, and he opens up his computer, his Lenovo computer, and it recognizes his face. He turns it to his wife, and he embraces his wife, and everything's wonderful.
That was your idea, right?
No, it wasn't, but it was brilliant. So we moved the needle dramatically in India. Now India is one of our highest growth markets, and we took the lessons and best practices that we learned out of China, and we implemented them in India. Now we're trying to roll that out across the world. The biggest challenge that we have is now getting over the concept of NIH, not invented here, because you got to get people to believe that the system that was put in place that'll work in one place will actually, you can transport it somewhere else, because there's always resistance in an organization not to let that happen, and that's one of the biggest challenges we have to face as we roll out some of these best practices.